Welcome back everyone. A long pending video on request. Short story Thank You Ma'am, written by Langston Hughes, Workbook Solutions. In today's session, I'm going to discuss 5 very important questions and answers from this short story. I have written these questions following the latest ISC 2024 specimen question pattern. और वो क्या है? Long answers 200 to 250 words or short answers 100 to 150 words. Until further notification, I'm going to follow this pattern. Do check the pinned comment section for all important video links related to your syllabus. Let us begin our discussion today. Question 1, long answer question hai ye. In the story Thank You Ma'am, Mrs. Jones treated Roger with motherly love and affection instead of punishing him. Do you think she was right in the way she treated Roger? Give examples from the story to justify your answer. This is understanding based question. You will have to express your opinion, your interpretation of the text and justify with suitable textual references. Here I'll be highlighting the theme of kindness, empathy, compassion versus punishment. And I will also focus on the reformation of Roger. मुझे लगता है Mrs. Jones was right in the way she treated Roger. And how did she treat him? With kindness, with compassion, with empathy. Let's read the answer now. Introduction में मैंने क्या लिखा है? But before that, a little request, a very small request. Dear students, please subscribe to our channel. Like, share और comment भी कर देना. Otherwise, these reference videos will not reach out to you properly. So, please like and comment as well. Introduction जो है मैंने directly question से ही उठा लिया है. So, a direct connection between the question and the answer. The examiner is going to be impressed. Thank you ma'am shows the reformation of Roger. ये एक critical comment है. Very important. Reformation of Roger. इससे ये establish हो जाता है कि मैं सोचती हूँ कि Mrs. Jones was right in the way she treated Roger. Right at the beginning, establish or state your viewpoint. Reformation of Roger when Mrs. Luella Jones treats him with motherly love and affection. देखो question में ये words question में ही है और question से ही मैंने ये सब कुछ यहाँ पे लिख डाला है. Change paragraphs and start the justification. It begins with an encounter wherein Roger attempts to steal Mrs. Jones's purse. जब Roger Mrs. Jones का जो ये पर्स है, लार्ज पर्स है, उसे स्टील करने आता है तो क्या होता है Roger के साथ? Mrs. Jones कैसे उसे ट्रीट करती है? Though she kicks him right square in his blue jeans sitter, shakes him until his teeth rattled, it quickly becomes evident that punishment is not what she has in mind for Roger. पहले तो वो मारती है Roger को, पकड़ती है Roger को और shakes him roughly. But हमें जल्दी पता चलता है कि वो Roger को punish नहीं करने वाली है, Roger को पुलिस के पास नहीं ले जाने वाली है. Instead, she treats Roger in a different manner. और वो क्या है? She treats him with kindness. Addressing Roger's son, she decides to teach him right from wrong. A very important quotation, right from wrong, by engaging him in dialogue. So this is going to be an open dialogue, a conversation. First, she instructs him to return her purse. Purse वापस दो. Next, she tries to activate his conscience. Initially, the frightened boy, पहले तो Roger बहुत डरा हुआ था. Initially, the frightened boy wants her to turn him loose, but वो छोड़ती नहीं है. She drags him home, learns his name, makes him wash his face, feeds him dinner. She surprises him by not immediately condemning his desire for a pair of blue suede shoes. जब Roger confess करता है, hunger के लिए नहीं, मैं blue suede shoes खरीदने के लिए I was attempting to steal your purse. That time also, Mrs. Jones doesn't get angry. She does not immediately condemn his desire for the shoes, rather empathizes. Very important. She empathizes. This is the kind of treatment that she gives to Roger. A quotation. I were young once and I wanted things I could not get. This is another important quotation. Learn this properly and use this in your answer. Her kindness. Now the effect. Was she right in the way she treated? What is your opinion? This is my opinion, my interpretation. Her kindness has a demonstrable effect on Roger. While in her house, he has multiple opportunities to run away or to steal. She does not watch him. वो Roger के ऊपर नजर भी नहीं रखती है. Roger does not want to be mistrusted now. और Roger अब वहाँ से run away नहीं करना चाहता, वहाँ से कुछ steal नहीं करना चाहता. Rather, he does not want to be mistrusted now. This mutual trust displays the transformational nature. Very important, critical comment. Transformational nature of empathy. हमने ये डिस्कस किया अभी तक. Mrs. Jones treats Roger with empathy and she is right in doing so because Roger is transformed, reformed. Reformation of Roger को मैंने ऐसे justify किया है with the help of appropriate textual references. Mutual trust displays the transformational nature of empathy. An openness develops. There is an openness between the two now. She gives him $10 to buy those shoes. Her words, behave yourself boy, suggest a life lesson which Roger will remember forever. This is the impact of the treatment. अगर वो मारती झगड़ती उसे पुलिस के पास ले जाती तो क्या होता हमें नहीं पता है मगर since she has treated Roger with kindness, Roger is now a changed person and he is perhaps going to remember the life lesson that he has learned from Mrs. Jones forever. Now, always use appropriate conclusion for your answers. Don't end your answers abruptly. Though he barely manages to say thank you, Mrs. Jones rightly demonstrates how kindness differs from punishment both in method and in effect. Learn this section. Learn this. Mrs. Jones rightly. This is my ending. Yes, she was right. Rightly demonstrates how kindness differs from punishment both in method. What is her method? Her method is different. Instead of punishing him, instead of taking him to the police, she engages him in a dialogue, an open conversation where there is openness, no embarrassment, no humiliation, and in effect, और इसका effect भी different है. Kindness से Roger अब एक changed person बन गया है. Stepping into the role of a mother. पहले ही हमें question में क्या दिया गया है? Motherly affection. So I have established this also at the end. Stepping into the role of a mother, she changes Roger. See how I have justified the answer. A very compact answer. You can learn this answer ditto. Instead of being judgmental, harsh, she is affectionate and understanding. Her treatment, and she is right. Absolutely right in this way. She changes Roger, and this is the most important thing. Roger is a changed boy. He has learnt right from wrong. Word limit क्या है? 250 words. 200 to 250 words. इस आंसर को मैंने 250 words में finish किया है. A perfect reference answer. Now, let's quickly move on to question number 2. I'll just change the page. Yes. Another Morning Star question. In today's session, I'm solving the Morning Star questions. Roger was shocked twice in the story. Give details, a detailed description, what he expected and what happened. 200 to 250 words, again, a long answer. Question, introduction. In Thank You Ma'am, Langston Hughes shows how kindness differs from punishment both in method and in effect. I've already told you to learn this section. You can use this anywhere in your answers. This is a critical comment and use this in your answers. To do this deftly. Deftly का मतलब बहुत अच्छे तरीके से. He introduces situations in the story which undermine the reader's likely expectations. हम बहुत बार देखते हैं readers, बहुत बार ये देखते हैं कि कैसे Langston Hughes deliberately undermines the reader's expectations. Likewise, Roger's expectations are also subverted twice in the story and he is shocked. Again, introduction में ही मैंने जो question है उसे mention किया है. See, this shows that I have understood the question and I'm writing according to the question. Direct relation है, direct words मैंने pick किया है question से. Learn this. Learn to frame your answers like this and you will do well. I'm sure. Change paragraph. So this is my standpoint and now I'll justify. I'll give the details. Roger attempts to steal. पहला situation according to me क्या है? Roger attempts to steal Mrs. Luella Jones's large purse as she walks alone at about 11 o'clock at night. Instead of taking off full blast, as he had hoped, a quotation, he falls on his back on the sidewalk and his legs are up. The strap breaks with a single tug. He gives it from behind. Mrs. Jones simply turns around, kicks him before yanking him up by the shirt so roughly that his teeth rattle. तो रॉजर क्या सोच के आया था? He came from behind to snatch Mrs. Luella Jones's large purse and he had also hoped to take off full blast. वहां से वो बैग छीन के वो वहां से रफू चक्कर हो जाएगा, वो वहां से दौड़ के भाग जाएगा. मगर क्या हुआ है? एक्सपेक्टेशन क्या था? To run away as quickly as possible. मगर reality में क्या हुआ? He falls on his back on the sidewalk and his legs are up. So here Roger is the attacker. और एक अबला नारी मिसेस लुएला जोन्स, एक वुमन एक लार्ज पर्स के साथ रात को 11 बजे के आसपास अलोन स्ट्रीट में चल रही थी. What do we expect? What does the attacker expect? He will do his job easily and he will run away. But expectation does not match the reality. वो एक अबला नारी नहीं है. Mrs. Luella Jones is strong. She simply turns around, kicks him before yanking him up by the shirt so roughly that his teeth rattle. Firmly gripped by his shirt, his frailty, critical comment is exposed. How weak the attacker is. Things do not happen as planned. Expectation के मुताबिक things नहीं गया. She drags him to her house. क्या हुआ? उसके ऊपर Mrs. Jones drags him to her house, does not go to the police. पुलिस के पास भी वो नहीं गई. Rather, she sets to teach him right from wrong. Roger is taken aback. ये सब देख के Roger तो बहुत भौचक्का रह गया and he is shocked. He is taken aback. ये क्या हो गया मेरे साथ? So this is the first instance. Second instance, according to me, this is instance number 2, situation number 2. Later, Roger informs Mrs. Jones that it is not hunger, but his desire to buy a pair of blue suede shoes, which is behind his wrong action. After a very long pause, Mrs. Jones says, I were young once and I wanted things I could not get. Here again, Roger perhaps expects a scolding. और अ कंडेमनेशन, अ डायरेक्ट कंडेमनेशन, ये तुमने ठीक नहीं किया, नहीं नहीं, एक पेयर ऑफ शूज के लिए तुम चोरी करोगे, नहीं नहीं। मगर मिसेस जोन्स क्या कहती है? आई वर यंग वंस एंड आई वांटेड थिंग्स आई कुड नॉट गेट। There is another long pause. Roger's mouth opens. Kyun? Because he is shocked, he is surprised, he frowns unknowingly. Roger's likely expectation to be condemned for this is again undermined. This is the second instance. There is silence. Her words, I have done things too, suggest a commonality. रॉजर का जो सिचुएशन है अभी, मिसेस जोन्स ने भी ऐसा कुछ फेस किया जब वो यंग थी। एंड ओपननेस ग्रोज बट रॉजर इज शॉक्ड। ये क्या हो रहा है? ये मिसेस जोन्स मुझे ऐसे क्यों ट्रीट कर रही है? हियर एक्चुअली मिसेस जोन्स इज ट्राइंग टू एक्टिवेट his conscience. He must realize his mistake on his own. Such incidents, thus, this is the conclusion, heighten the story's argument that empathy is often more powerful than condemnation. और इसी चीज को establish करने के लिए बार बार लैंगस्टन ह्यूज एक्सपेक्टेशन जो है उससे हट के रियलिटी को वो प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं throughout the narrative. Now here 251 words में मैंने इस आंसर को लिखा है, so a slight editing, one word manage हो जाएगा and we are fine to learn this answer. What do you think? It's time for me to discuss question number 3, I guess. Here is question number 3, a short answer question. 100 to 150 words, remember the word limit. The two characters in the story, कौन? Roger, Mrs. Luella Jones, thank you ma'am, are lonesome. Very important. Critically हमें ये analyze करना है. Comment on the appropriateness of the statement. ये भी Morning Star में है. In thank you ma'am, Roger and Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones are lonesome. फिर से इंट्रोडक्टरी स्टेटमेंट जो है वो डायरेक्टली कनेक्टेड टू द क्वेश्चन है. थ्रू दीज कैरेक्टर्स लैंगस्टन ह्यूज एक्सप्लोर्स द थीम ऑफ फैमिली. क्रिटिकल कमेंट है ये, इंपॉर्टेंट. फैमिली, कम्युनिटी एंड होम इन द स्टोरी. जस्ट अ ब्रीफ मेंशन. After that, it may be assumed that Mrs. Jones has had more than one marriage. Mrs. Luella Washington Bates Jones नाम, सरनेम पढ़ के हमें ये अंदाजा हो जाता है कि वो मल्टीपल टाइम्स उन्होंने शादी किया हुआ है. So it may be assumed, we can just assume that. It is not directly mentioned, but we can assume that. We do not know if she has a son. Direct कोई reference नहीं है Mrs. Jones had a son or not. The boarding house with many rumors where she lives shows that she lacks her own family and traditional home. वो बोर्डिंग में क्यों रहेगी? शायद मल्टीपल टाइम्स उन्होंने शादी किया है. शायद सन है या नहीं है हमें नहीं पता है, मगर वो एक बोर्डिंग हाउस में रहती है. उनका अपना कोई फैमिली नहीं है. ओन फैमिली डायरेक्टली मेंशन नहीं किया गया है. ट्रेडिशनल होम भी नहीं है. शी हैज अ जॉब इन अ होटल, ब्यूटी शॉप, वॉक्स होम अलोन. ये अलोन बार बार हमें ये सोचने पे मजबूर करती है कि एक्चुअली में मिसेस जोन्स इज अ लोनसम कैरेक्टर. वॉक्स होम अलोन लेट एट नाइट. सो दिस इज द situation of Mrs. Luella Jones. Now, let's discuss the condition, the situation of Roger. The frail and willow-wiled Roger too has nobody at his house. Quotation from the text, nobody home to tell him to wash his face. Mrs. Roger wants to know, why didn't you wash your face? Is it late? Will you get supper at home? Do you have anybody at home? We come to know that Roger has nobody home at his house to tell him to wash his face or prepare supper. He's clearly on his own, unsupervised, lonely. Therefore, yes, the statement that the two characters in the story are lonesome is appropriate. Thus, conclusion. Their shared lack of family ties them together. वो करीब क्यों आते हैं? They come close to each other so easily. Why? Because of this shared lack of family. This ties them together. This is a critical analysis section. Due to the pain of solitude, they develop a sense of connection. Mrs. Jones steps into the role of a mother quite effortlessly, and Roger does not want to be mistrusted now. And Roger is also receptive to her kindness. Abruptly, however, they part. Again, they are alone. So, they are lonesome characters. 150 words. Perfect. You can learn this from here. Question number 4. Another short answer question. 100 to 150 words. Roger attempts to steal because he wanted to procure blue sweat shoes. Explain the symbolism used here. Symbolic significance. Important. Morning Star question. Mrs. Luella Jones suggests that Roger wanted money for food. Quickly, Roger corrects her. I wanted a pair of blue sweat shoes. Quotation. In Thank You Ma'am, Langston Hughes uses these shoes as a symbol. I'll just add Hughes over here. Uses these shoes as a symbol. So, everything that I have written in the introduction is there in the question. To the point answer without beating around the bush. Now the explanation. For Roger, the symbolic significance, symbolism kya hai? Learn this properly. These shoes embody the kind of person he wants to be and the kind of life he wants to have. By stealing from Mrs. Jones, he was taking a shortcut to his aspirations. These fancy shoes, when these are fancy shoes, are something that seem almost unattainable, very important to Roger. This symbolizes important, sab kuch important hai. His adolescence craving. His adolescence craving for luxury and a step forward in life. वो एक adolescent है, ठीक है? 13 और 17 years के बीच का जो phase है, उसको हम adolescence कहते हैं. So this is his adolescence craving for luxury and a step forward in life. The satisfaction of owning such an item will perhaps make him feel like he is more than his homelessness or his supposedly inferior social status, a kind of self-worth. So this is going to give him a kind of self-worth. And these kind of psychological complexities are often seen in some adolescent boys and girls. और रॉजर के केस में भी वो एक होमलेस लोनसम कैरेक्टर है. Perhaps वो बहुत गरीब भी है. There is no such direct reference to his poverty. But we can assume that he has an inferior social status. इन सारी चीज़ों को बीट करने के लिए उसको क्या चाहिए? एक अनअटेनेबल चीज को अटेन करना चाहिए. और वो क्या है? ब्लू स्वेट शूज है. और इसीलिए he has resorted to stealing a shortcut to his aspirations. So this is a symbolic significance. This may rightly seem to some as unnecessary indulgence. हमको ये शायद लगेगा फैंसी शूज ही तो है, क्या फर्क, क्या बड़ी बात है, ठीक है? But such sense of self-worth and emotional satisfaction is of huge importance to an adolescent. Psychological complexity of an adolescent. Mrs. Jones empathizes, EMPATHIZES, with him. The issue here is that he resorted to stealing. यहाँ पे issue blue suede shoes नहीं है, यहाँ पे issue है stealing, and this is quickly rectified under her motherly guidance. So this is the critical analysis as well as the conclusion. 156 words, so please do a little editing and I'm sure you will bring this down to 150 words. Symbolism important hai. Learn this answer properly. Understood? Now quickly let's read the last question, and it is question number 5. In the story, thank you ma'am, give a character sketch of Roger. What perception do you have after reading the story? Give details to support your answer. Another opinion based question. Morningstar में ये है, long answer question है, 200 to 250 words. Langston Hughes, thank you ma'am, narrates the reformation of an adolescent Roger. So here the same introduction but adolescent. This is critical comment. Adolescent Roger. He is a complex character. Critical comment. Who, like many other teenage boys, desire the unattainable. Understand this concept. The reason behind his attempted thievery is his adolescent craving for a pair of blue suede shoes. It appears to be an unnecessary indulgence, but the shoes will give him emotional satisfaction and self-worth. Same reference material hai, magar framing of the answer is different depending on the question available. So frame your answers in this way. He takes a shortcut to fulfill his aspirations, which is wrong. This, however, sets the stage for his encounter with Mrs. Luella Jones. Character sketch of Roger. Reformation. Complex character. Psychological complexity of an adolescent. And now, this sets the stage for his encounter with Mrs. Luella Jones. He runs up behind her, tries to snatch her purse. Instead of taking a full blast, he falls back. His frailty is exposed as he confronts the formidable Mrs. Jones. वो strong नहीं है. Mrs. Jones बहुत strong है. He has nobody home, is clearly on his own, unsupervised, lonesome, unkempt. Character sketch. His lack of family makes him receptive to Mrs. Jones's motherly guidance. Character sketch. So, write character sketch properly. Analyze the character and give sufficient details to substantiate your viewpoint. Initially, he is frightened, does not take responsibility. See, character. For his actions, wants to run. वहाँ से भागना चाहता है पहले तो. Gradually, he starts learning right from wrong as Mrs. Jones allows him space to rectify himself. Character analysis. His expectations are undermined. He is shocked, surprised. बहुत कुछ होता है उसके साथ. Ultimately, he is a changed boy. While in her house, Roger gets multiple opportunities to run away or to steal, but now he tries to be useful and trustworthy. This shows the change. This is second chance. He will perhaps follow Mrs. Jones's life lesson, behave yourself, boy. A quotation. Instilled with trust, his conscience is activated. See how I am using the same reference, but I have framed it differently in order to analyze Roger's character. He barely manages to say thank you. At the end, he becomes homeless again. Nevertheless, he will change out of desire to be worthy of Mrs. Jones's compassion. अब वो डिजायर फुलफिल ब्लू स्वेट शूज के लिए वो चोरी नहीं करने वाला है, वो चेंज करने वाला है आउट ऑफ डिजायर टू बी वर्दी ऑफ मिसेस जोन्सेस कंपैशन. वो एक अच्छा इंसान बनने वाला है. Thus, this is my perception after the reading. He is a dynamic character. Static character नहीं है. एक ग्राफ है. एक adolescent boy with a lot of psychological complexity से वो एक changed person बन गया है after the end of the story. We can assume this. So in this way, he is a dynamic character embodying the transformational nature of empathy. So, unfortunately, यहाँ पे भी 7 words extra हो गया. Just a little bit of editing, dear students. Do it yourself and you're good to go.